Hello, everyone. My name is Adam Williams, and you are either listening or perhaps watching another episode of Retail Redeveloped. Now, we're still going to have a retail podcast, but we're going to have a little bit of a twist. I got a phone call that was kind of a strange one earlier this week, asking me to opine on a strip club of all things that was located in South End of Charlotte, and it was a larger topic, but one that is very top of mind right now. And it is, what happens when a neighborhood gets so hot that a lot of the old standing establishments that have been there for a long, long time are actually pushed out of the neighborhood because it's changed so fast. The person that was on the other line that was asking me these questions was one Katie Peralta Soloff. She is the local business reporter for Axios Charlotte. I've known her for a while. She does great work. Obviously, Axios is a massive media channel here locally. And Katie, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to expound on this topic with me.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here.
Now, before we dive into all things related to a changing city, do me a favor, just introduce yourself, tell people kind of who you are, and what you do, and why this is such a big topic for what you care about.
Um, awesome. So I am Katie. I have been with Axios Charlotte for going on 2 years before we were Charlotte Agenda, as most people know. I before that was at the Charlotte Observer for like 5 years, 4.5 years, doing coverage on retail, some development, sports business, things like that. And I'm kind of from Charlotte. I moved here in high school from the Midwest, so I claim this city as my own now. And I've been around long enough, I guess you could say, that I've fallen in love with certain
Quasi local.
places.
We'll give you quasi
Quasi,
local status.
I'm more local than a lot of people. Let's say that.
Absolutely.
But I'm not a real local like yourself. um, we've been around long enough to fall in love with places and then have them close, and it's a really tough thing, especially as someone who covers local businesses, because you form a connection with places, and there's a story behind them, and there are memories associated with them, even if it's not some award-winning restaurant or some fine dining experience. You remember places where you worked in high school or where you had your first date or something like
Mhm.
that. So there's people have a fond connection, a sense of place with these establishments. And to me, that's one of the fun things about local reporting is sort of unpacking that emotional connection to certain businesses. And the pandemic has obviously changed a lot about our local business scene, and it's certainly laying the groundwork for a new business environment in Charlotte moving forward.
So let's start kind of broadly first. In your mind, what does the closing of these Charlotte staples mean for the identity of Charlotte? Yeah, I have a lot of friends that know what I do. They know I'm in commercial real estate. Yeah, I typically know these things are coming, or sometimes I'm even involved with the closing, or the selling of the land, or hot takes from friends that are both live in Charlotte and used to live in Charlotte. Um, you know, Obviously the hot topic right now is Price's Chicken Coop closing. I will give that legit Charlotte staple status, right? Like, I remember going there when I was a small kid. It's been around forever. So that will give that true staple status. What is that? What does it mean in your mind, in your readers' minds, when these staples close? Like, how does it affect you? How does it affect the people that you interact with?
I think there's a two-pronged response to this. There's the practical reporter side of me that wants to say everything has to come to an end. Not everything can be around forever. If there's no heir apparent to a business, for instance, if property values are skyrocketing to the extent that it makes no sense to stick around, sure, it makes total sense, and it's you know difficult to see that closure, but it also is very logical. Also, all of these, issues with growth compounded with the pandemic accelerated all of these trends that were already underway in Charlotte, aging businesses, skyrocketing property values. and forced a lot of businesses to innovate really quickly. If businesses didn't have really smooth, clean online ordering and or delivery, they were kind of SOL.
Right.
And you saw a lot of businesses adapting fully, restaffing, hiring new people to make up a takeout focused menu in order to
Right.
survive. Um, and a lot of people might say a failure to adapt is kind of a recipe for failure. A failure to adapt is a recipe for possible closure down the line. On the other hand, there's the community side of you that knows that there is a piece of the community's personality that gets lost when these longstanding establishments go away. For a place objectively delicious like prices, you lose a spot to take friends when they're visiting from out of town. When you lose the Manor Theater, you lose kind of a go-to date night spot, where you can get a glass of wine beforehand and walk around the neighborhood. So these are pieces of the city's identity that cannot be reclaimed. And it's sort of, pieces of ourselves that are nice bragging points. Big cities all have really, really old establishments. So we want to have those homegrown places. We don't want to be just a city of chains. Although having really hot chains does make us feel pretty cool, and it makes us it's fun to go to new places. But I think that you lose sort of a kind of key character trait by losing these longtime businesses.
So talk to me about you guys, my favorite part of Axios is when one of these stories happens, reading the comments, because people get freaking nuts with the comments. I mean, people are not afraid to leave some hot takes. What's been the feedback from your kind of constituents as it relates to these closures? That you mentioned a couple, we could mention more. What's been the general consensus?
There's a lot of sadness and nostalgia. People always chime in with their memories about a place. I remember this exact same thing when Park Terrace closed and before they were purchased by AMC and sort of redone into this modern theater. This sense of nostalgia, this sense of just loss, I guess. Of course, there's always going to be people chiming in the comments with their own hot takes, like such and such restaurant sucked anyways, like they didn't have this or that. And so
Right.
there's always going to kind of be two sides of the equation. But I think that especially for a city like Charlotte, where we're so transplant heavy, it's a nice kind of introduction to the city to have places like this. And if people don't experience them, they missed out permanently on something that we treasured.
Yeah. So it's, for me, and I try to keep my real estate brain out of the more to your point, nostalgic, emotional kind of arguments, or not arguments, just point of view. And for me, we do a lot of leases, right? Like most of Mr. Price, smart of him, owns his dirt, and game changer, right? But tremendous, like lion's share of these establishments are on leases, right? And a normal lease for a retail or restaurant is generally about 10 years, right? And if a restaurant makes it 10 years or 20 years, if they've done their option periods correctly, and they've been successful and they haven't had any defaults, yada yada yada, that is a hell of a run. Right. 10 years is a good run. 20 years is an incredible run. So I have like two sides of my personality. One, just the purely analytical side that says like, oh my God, I mean, they were there north of 10 or 20 years. It's a miracle that they lasted that long. And then the other side, that's less kind of capitalist pig side, says, oh my God, we should really celebrate these people that have made it on of the magic of Charlotte. So I've got to kind of balance those two sides of my brain.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
what do you say to the people? And I don't know I've never asked you this question. What do you say to the people that say that this type of thing, I'm not saying prices by itself, but this type of trend is destroying South End? Like how does that statement strike you?
It's it's not it's a good question, and it's sort of a hard thing to answer too, because like I'm 33. I feel like I've aged out of South End, in that I don't go out in South End. I don't I can't stand waiting in line for stuff, and at the same time I walk around there seeing people wrapped around the block for Jenny's, and like walking to work at Dimensional Fund Advisors, and that sort of neighborhood is incredible to have. I mean, objectively, it is really fascinating that it has just morphed very, very quickly. It was intentional, but it really happened very, very quickly. And now it is arguably the hottest office submarket in the Southeast. I don't see it necessarily as being ruined when those places close. Rather, just part of the evolution. I think that it's really important to always treasure these places, and the way that you do that is to patronize them. If you say that you love like the Thirsty Beaver, go to the Thirsty Beaver. Like make sure that you patronize these places. At the same time, the pandemic again just really threw this unpredictable wrench into everything. And no matter how much you patronized a place, or no matter how much you supported a certain business, it kind of doesn't matter, based on certain factors that we're hearing about with the pandemic. I mean, the labor shortage is no joke right now. If you don't have enough people
Very
to
serious.
staff your restaurant or your bar, you can't make it. So sadly, it is kind of unavoidable right now for a lot of places. I don't know how long this is going to last. Honestly, I don't know how, like when the hump is that we'll get over, but the recovery is happening much more quickly than I think anybody anticipated. And so that's really playing out in what labor looks like right now. And I don't even know if I answered your question. I don't know. I don't remember what it was. Just South End being ruined, I guess.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. There's no right answers. There's no right answers. I mean, I think that unfortunately, or fortunately or unfortunately, I mean, South End is not the South End that it was when some people that know me know that my mom ran a flower shop on Bland Street, literally a block from where we're talking about, for years and years and years in the 90s. And a lot of the people that are bemoaning the death of South End didn't know the South End that I knew in the 80s and 90s. It's a very, very different place. And I completely understand the hand wringing and the emotion that comes with losing a Mr. K's and prices and Spoon's Barbecue, and I'm sure that people are going to tell me that I'm forgetting some. Fat Burrito, Common Market. I'm sure I can think of some more if I sit here. And that matters, right? It absolutely matters. And you don't want to be that kind of pompous person that says, yeah, you make an omelet, you got to break some eggs, that's just a path of progress kind of casualty, because that's not fair. And that doesn't give it the amount of credence that it should have. But at the same time, if you offer certainly somebody in city planning or someone in that is probably not going to go on record, the choice of losing select establishments but gaining the most dynamic office, retail, and residential market in between, Nashville and West Midtown Atlanta. Well, West Midtown Atlanta doesn't have nearly the office market that South End has. Short answer is we've created, and by we, I mean cumulatively, very, very intelligent planning to run the light rail and, some cool old brick and beam stuff that kind of made it hip to want to develop there. For whatever factors, whatever happened that went into it, we have the lightning in a bottle in South End. And I'm on the forefront. I'm talking with, some of the biggest equity players, some of the biggest real estate players on the planet. And South End, Charlotte, North Carolina is in every conversation. It's Austin, it's Nashville, and it's us being Charlotte. And that is insane to think about what a short list that Charlotte is on. And it's because of South End. It's not because of Myers Park. It's not because we have a Neiman Marcus in South Park. It's not even because we have a formerly thriving and soon to be thriving again Central Business District. It's this little patch of land on the light rail that has just become the most dynamic place that people want to be. So for me, I hate the closures. You want, but the upside is also pretty incredible.
Um,
Now you can't
can
let me
I
off the
ask,
hook. You got to counterpoint me.
can I ask you a question?
Sure.
When did your mom's shop close, or when did she decide to leave South End?
Oh, good. So she was pushed out because of development, and that would have been 2000, early two or mid 2000s,
Okay.
2005ish is my guess. I don't remember the date, but call it. She's gonna get mad at me. I'm gonna have to text her and find out that date. But it was, South End was still nothing compared to what it was or what it is now. But you could kind of see the writing on the wall.
And that's just as they were getting, or laying the groundwork rather, for the light rail, probably seeing those property values go up. In 2005, no, 2006, when I was in high school, we had our post prom at Jillian's, which is where All American Pub was.
Absolutely. I remember Jillian.
And Jillian's was a lot of fun. There was, like,
Yeah.
games, and I don't know, it was probably a bar, but of course we were in high school, so we were just, drinking sodas. But at the time, we were all sort of like, this is a strange spot. Why did you
Right.
pick this? And the parents were all saying, it's in a rougher part of town. Like, you have to be careful. It wasn't
True.
rough. It was just, it was like industrial. Like, it was all, just totally old manufacturing buildings, just sort of desolate. And the fact of the matter is, like, there were a lot of wonderful spots that could thrive in South End because the property values were cheap. And that's
Right.
how it became sort of a destination for longstanding businesses. I have to share this with you. I was looking at some, just doing research for a story, and I found this WFAE piece from several years ago where they're talking about naming historic South End. The firm Shook Kelly did
Yes,
that. They spearheaded that, and Terry Shook sort of laughed about the name historic South End, even though they came up with it. And he said that was tongue in cheek, because the truth is about Charlotte in general, and in particular South End, is that there's little that's historic.
Well, and that honestly brings up a very, very timely point. So as I kind of briefly mentioned, part of what made South End a place that people wanted to redevelop was the brick and beam warehouse style construction, right? So if you go into Barcelona, Superica, the whole
Krispy Kreme.
Asana Design Center complex, that is kind of what made South End redevelopment cool. But unfortunately, that's not the future of South End. Dimensional Fund, Vantage, Rail Yard, Lowe's, Portman's new project, The Line, like it or not, everything that Cousins is going to do with your ill-fated Jillian's location. I mean, the future of South End is vertical. The future of South End is dense. And that is by design, right? I mean, the city wants massive density on the light rail because that's how you grow a city without sprawl. That's a good thing. But unfortunately, we're going to lose a lot of the character that kind of made South End cool to begin with. I mean, luckily, there are pockets where it'll at least stay for a while, like the Design Within Reach and the Flower Child buildings. Those are long-term leases, and they're super cool, kind of brick and beam historic. Like I mentioned, Atherton, the Design Center. I mean, there's some cool brick and beam buildings left. And there's nods to that type of construction, like the way that Beacon redid the rail yard, and they went just completely over the top with the kind of warehouse chic aesthetic. Shout out to RBA, great architects that I think did that design. I'm sure I messed that up. I'm sure a lot of people were involved, but I know they were involved. So I think that is one thing that I will admit it's going to be a challenge, because South End is much more Midtown Charlotte. No offense to actual what we call the Metropolitan in that Midtown, but this is a true Midtown in the sense of what big cities call their Midtown. And, we're all just going to have to come to grips with it, because that's the way it's going.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, looking ahead, like where, for these places that were pushed out of this now thriving business district that we've talked about, where does a business go to start out? Like, where is
Great
a
question.
new home that I can actually afford? And I think that that's something to watch too. If you're looking to like, track Charlotte's up and coming restaurants, or maybe like, what's the prices of, 2 generations from now or something like that. And it's going to be those places that are like much less expensive, because the property values are just too prohibitive for, a young chef starting out to open up his own kitchen. And it's just the new reality, simply. Unless you operate out of a food truck and travel around South End, then there's not even a possibility that you could do that. One place that I think is really kind of cool is this Eastway Crossing out central, kind of past Plaza Midwood. They have it's become this little haven, like the Central Avenue Dairy Queen relocated out there. There's like a vegan cafe that's really good. Sosu, the new ramen place. So it's just all part of a city's evolution. And I think that's truly part of Charlotte's personality, whether people like it or not, is we are always changing. And I think that's okay. I think that's okay, as long as we encourage, entrepreneurship and encourage people to do their own thing and support them in that. I think that loss is sadly part of what this growth entails.
And like you, I'm very, very intrigued with that next area, because South End, for better or worse, you've got to be a professional to play in South End these days. I wouldn't, if I had a client that was more mom and pop, I would warn them against even looking in South End, because the price of admission is certainly, as high as anywhere in the city. Maybe South Park Mall, because of just the way they operate, Tycam and things like that, might be higher, but it's not cheap. And you've got some very smart people on the other side of the table that are going to take a hard look at your business plan and your financials and things like that. So I like to look at these other areas, but I mean, let's be honest. I mean, there are some really cool areas. You've got like Thrift and J, Eastway Crossing. I mean, all of Plaza Midwood. It's not even Plaza Midwood, but Central to Eastway, that whole strip has some awesome stuff. And I think that Camp North End, we haven't even started seeing what's going to happen on North Tryon, Camp North End, how kind of NODA and North Tryon is going to start to bleed into one another. I think that's really, really interesting. I think there's room for other really cool areas. I mean, I think South End has kind of sucked the gravity out of the room for the moment. But I can't wait to see what those other really fun areas are.
Yeah, absolutely. And they happen to be much more affordable right now. I mean,
right.
The Thrift area, like that's like not only super walkable, but it's also just funky and cool. And it has a different feel than a lot of other like highly developed areas of town. I mean, shoot, Ballantyne is going to be 100% different in like 10 years than it is now. So, I think that where South End was like 5 years ago. So what was 5 years ago? 2016 is even so different from what it is now. Even 5 years ago, you could still afford to, to have a reasonably sized storefront. 5 years ago, there would still be stretches where you would look around and think, man, this is so dead. But now it's virtually impossible. And now you're at the point where you look I was at Lending Tree's new headquarters a few
Vantage.
weeks ago.
Shout out to Vantage. Shout out to Spectrum. Great project. Love that project.
It's insane. It's completely gorgeous. And you look out into Uptown from one side of their building, and there happens to be like a very small parking lot that's empty down below, and everyone in the office is all abuzz about like, oh my God, what's that going to be? Because like, you know, that empty lot space or like little random buildings are just going to turn into something eventually. So it's sort of a matter of figuring out what's left as opposed to what's already happening, because there's not much left to redevelop.
But one thing to think about, and again, trying to look on the bright side, being the, you know, capitalist development pig that I am, on Vantage, they put, so that project, Spectrum people are going to kill me if I mess up the square footage. It's roughly 650,000 square feet, right? And they are going to end up with more green space on that site than was there when they bought it. So I mean, that we're having a 1 acre park in the middle of South End is really cool, and it's never really existed before. So I mean, I think there are big time upsides, even though, you know, we are losing some things that mean a lot to people, and I don't want to be callous about it. I know that people are emotionally affected by some of these things, and we get so tied to our neighborhood staples. So before I let you go, tell people how they can connect with you, how they can read your stuff, how they can get involved with Axios and get involved with the conversation and just connect with you.
Yeah. So believe it or not, I actually really, really love getting emails from readers. I think it's a lot of fun.
You. I would have an unlisted everything if I were you.
Well, it's not bad as long as people are kind of like civil, which they normally are actually. At the Observer, I got a lot of not so civil emails, but at Axios, it's been pretty nice. I'm at Katie.Peralta at Axios.com. I'm always very active on Twitter too, so it's at Katie Peralta. And I do read our social media comments. Whether or not that's a good thing is TBD, but I do read what people say about what we post. So if you choose to engage there, we'll see it as well. But we really love hearing from people about things we ought to look at, things we ought to cover, favorite memories from certain places. Like you prefaced in your intro, Adam, like I did write about the strip club on South today, and people were even sharing memories.
My phone's been blowing up.
People were sharing memories about their time at Leather and Lace. So I'm like, you know what? I love it.
Anonymously, right?
Some anonymous, some not. And I love how some people were like, it's, it used to look like this inside or that. And I'm like, okay, well, clearly you did spend some time.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So definitely reach out. I'm always happy to chat.
Awesome. All right. Are you ready for some quick knee-jerk questions? Now you gotta top of mind. Charlotte is, and when I was 18 years ago, it was banker bro city where if you wanted to do a restaurant, it had to have steak and potatoes on the menu, and that was pretty much it. That's changed. What needs to happen for Charlotte to be considered a foodie city, or are we already there?
I think we're on our way. I think to become more of a foodie city, we need to embrace really innovative, different ideas. Personally, I think that we need more. Meshuggah is on the way to do this, but I'm very excited for an eventual really good bagel place / deli. I like that we are embracing the trend of takeout because we have to. And I appreciate that places are getting really innovative. I personally need to find a great Chinese takeout spot because I just don't have one. So I'm always open to recommendations on that front.
Important. You gotta step it up. Come on, people, give her some recommendations. I enjoyed, and I actually was sent this article by multiple people over the last couple of days. So that says something. What was the feedback like on your recent article on what chains Charlotte craves, and what received the biggest response from the readers? Like what struck a nerve?
People are insanely interested in having a Zara here, and it
Right? I've
actually,
heard that so many times.
yeah, it makes a lot more sense than something like a Wawa or like In and Out or something, because of the sort of regional challenges. But we're like the largest city without a Zara. They just finished like a 2-story store in Nashville. It just, to me, I don't understand why they don't have one here, and that seems to be the most universal um, response. However, people are absolutely infatuated with Wegmans, as you know.
They are.
Wawa is another really big one. People are also really, really obsessed with Sweet Green. I used to live in DC. I don't get the Sweet Green hype, but like, I'm not gonna interfere in people's
It's coming. They want to be here for sure. And
career.
Wawa, my family up in the Northeast is obsessed with Wawa. I mean, give me Quick Trip. I like Wawa, but Quick Trip is my jam. Sheets in a pinch does great job also. But my
Yep.
friends know I'll drive like on fumes to a Quick Trip. We talked a little bit about Charlotte's identity changing almost daily. I mean, with the amount of influx that we receive from the Midwest, like you, the Northeast, entire Rust Belt, how do you see that changing Charlotte um, in the future? I mean, we talked about the fabric of the city, but the bottom line is the fabric of the city is really driven by the people, and that's changing hourly. Like since we started this podcast, a couple of people have moved to Charlotte.
Yeah. I think, what is it, 100 people a day or 120 people a day or something?
Pre-COVID, it was more than that. Yeah, it was like 115 or something. It's a big number once you think about it.
Yeah. And I don't think that that's slowed since COVID. In fact, if anything, that number has increased since COVID, because people are realizing how relatively inexpensive it is to buy here and to live here. I think that aside from the like potential, like, you know, political ramifications of having tons of young people and tons of transplants here, I think that the way people build their nests, shall we say, is going to be different. So someone from San Francisco or um, New York or Chicago, anywhere that's like really dense, might be really interested in a townhouse where you share a wall with somebody else.
Right.
And they might be great with having smaller living spaces. If they're renting, they might be great with studios. They might be great with not having a car on site. I think that also, as Generation Z or whatever they are graduates from college and enters the workforce, they're also going to be driving a lot of this change. A lot of young people don't even have driver's license. I just learned this like a few months ago. Like, a lot of people are not even doing that. So I think that that's going to shape architecture. It's going to shape how we develop housing units. Also, all of us millennials are getting to the point where we're paying off student loans. We're looking to buy houses, which is helping to fuel some of this insane demand right now that Charlotte and every other, mid-sized city in the US is seeing in the single family housing market. So it's going to continue to shape how we build things and where we live. I also think that we will continue to see a really strong migration to places like Fort Mill and Rock Hill, where you can get a lot more bang for your buck. Great schools. So don't sleep on places like Rock Hill, because I think we're going to continue to see a lot of growth there, and areas like Norman. It just based on what people want and need in their communities.
All right, last question, and this is a perfect segue. The passing of the Charlotte 2040 plan. How do you see it affecting development? Do you see any big changes coming down the pipe, or do you think it's all just kind of pomp and circumstance?
I don't think it's pomp and circumstance, but I do think that a lot of the like I don't even want to say real drama, because I feel like we really experienced quite a bit of drama with the 2040 plan, but the consideration and passage of the Unified Development Ordinance that really codifies these zoning changes within the 2040 plan will be very significant. It will shape how we develop Charlotte for years to come. And if anything, with the 2040 plan, I think that it has really brought to the surface a mindfulness of, developing with inclusion and equity in mind, and doing so, thinking about the future and prioritizing density, which I do think that Charlotte was doing in a lot of places already. Um, it's just a matter of figuring out how that plays into maybe not just super dense areas like South End and Plaza Midwood. Like, what does that look like in South Park? What does that look like in Ballantyne? What does that look like in West Charlotte? So I think it's really shaping the mindset around development, and it's going to help shape what we expect of developers too. I think for a lot of the time, development has occurred in Charlotte sort of, they've been given sort of free reign to do a lot of whatever they wanted. And I think that now people are like, what about, requiring affordable housing, or what about, helping encouraging walkability, things like that in neighborhoods. So I think people are much more engaged in the development process right now, which is a great thing. Honestly, it's really important to know what's being built in your backyard.
Yeah, I'm always very, very torn because obviously smart development is huge, but governments aren't typically very good at most things, right? And I'm typically a very small government guy, and giving the government more ways to get involved and potentially become speed bumps is a scary thing to me, even though I understand that we got to have it, right? Somebody's got to be calling the shots. So how do we skirt that line of being pro business, pro development? I mean, there's a reason why everybody's flooding out of California and the Northeast is because taxes have gotten insane. Regulations have gotten insane. It's like, okay, where can we get? Let's go to Texas. Let's go to Colorado. Let's go to North Carolina. Let's go to Tennessee, where it hasn't gotten insane yet. So it's like, how do we be inclusive, be educated, try to develop things in the right way without being anti-business and without, making rules for the sake of rules. So I certainly don't have the answers, but man, there's been some hot takes on both sides of the aisle for the 2040 plan. All right, guys, my name is Adam Williams. I was so lucky to be joined by Katie Peralta Soloff. I got that right. With Axios Charlotte. I always love keeping tabs on what you're doing, and I'm very, very appreciative for you coming on today and sharing your knowledge and your opinions with the listeners.
Of course, this was awesome. I learned a lot too.
Awesome.